Welcome to the San Ramon Valley Unified School District Board of Education Board meeting. We want to let the public know that we are video recording today's meeting, and the recording is being live streamed on the district's YouTube channel, and a link to the recording has been posted to the district's website. I'd like to introduce my board members, Vice President Ken Mintz, Clerk Rachel Hurd.
Hello.
Board members Laura Bratt.
Hi.
And Shelley Clark.
Good evening.
And I'm your president, Susanna Ordway. I hope everyone had a wonderful, restful, and reflective weekend. As we approach the end of the school year, what a difference this spring has been from last year's. Though there are still some areas where we might anticipate adjustments for the fall, I think these past few months have been much more positive in terms of the pandemic and allowing us to move forward with more certainty. We have one more board meeting this month, but in case our last meeting will not be as entertaining as other activities, I want to wish all our students, parents, and staff a great summer with opportunities to connect with friends and family in person. With that, will you please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance?
Public for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, during this evening's closed session, the board made the following appointments effective July 1, 2021. Angie Coratone, Assistant Principal, Monte Vista High School. Catherine Noda, Assistant Director, Special Education. Zeta Riker, Director 2, Child Nutrition and Warehouse. Hong Nguyen, Director 2, Educational Equity. And Latanya Williams, Director 1, Human Resources Classified. May I have the motion to accept the minutes of May 18, 2021?
Second. The motion was made by Board Member Mintz and seconded by Board Member Hurd. Call out vote. Board Member Clark? Aye. Board Member Bratt?
Aye.
Board Member Hurd? Aye. Board Member Mintz? Board Member Ordway?
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Thanks. Then may I now have a motion to accept tonight's open session agenda?
So moved. Second. The motion was made by Board Member Bratt and seconded by Member Clark. Call out vote. Board Member Clark?
Aye.
Board Member Bratt?
Aye.
Board Member Hurd? Aye. Board Member Mintz? Board Member Ordway?
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Okay, approval of consent agenda. Consent items are considered routine in nature and are approved by combining them into a single vote. A member of the board or a member of the public may request that they be pulled and approved separately. And let's see, there is a request to pull 12.5 and 12.10. So 12.10 and 12.5 by Helen of the Doherty Valley. So that's going to be okay. So 12.5 and 12.10, and now going to be 10.5 and 10.6. Okay. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
So, second. The motion was made by Board Member Clark and seconded by Board Member Hurd. Call out vote. Board Member Clark? Aye. Board Member Bratt?
Aye.
Board Member Hurd? Aye. Board Member Mintz? Board Member Ordway?
Aye.
The motion passes.
Okay, so 9.0 reports to the board, and I have a comment I have to read before 9.1. As we all know, there are a host of documents, forms, reports that school district California are required to complete and provide to the county, state, and federal agencies. And of course, in SRVUSD, we comply with these legal obligations. Because these compliance reports can sometimes seem somewhat disconnected from one another and from the organization's goals, we are working vigilantly to show how all our work and resource allocation are aligned in support of the Board of Education's overarching strategic priorities, which includes equity, deep learning and innovation, and social emotional well-being. To this point, tonight, we will receive reports from staff on our Local Control Accountability Plan, or LCAP, as it's more commonly known, the LCP, our Extended Learning Opportunity Plans, or ELO, and budget information. Most of these items, but not all, legally require the Board of Education to hear and vote on them separately, provide clear opportunity for public comments by opening the item to a public hearing, then taking public comments, and then closing the hearing. To make sure that our board and community of this important work is integrated and aligned to support our overarching priorities, we will begin with a brief report on the status of strategic planning, followed by reports on LCAP, LCP, ELO, and budget, and then we will move to require public hearing to action. To allow us to show how work is integrated before we open an individual item to a public hearing and a vote of the Board of Education. That's a mouthful. Okay. So 9.1, strategic direction, draft of the strategic plan and local control and accountability plan. So Dr. Malloy.
Thank you, President Ordway. And though this report has been worked on by the entire team and frankly, district community, I will briefly provide the presentation just so that we can be focused and then we have time for your questions. So as the presentation is coming up, the first slide, I want to start by saying that transformational change, which is what we're talking about here, rests on the foundation's success that the district has already experienced, and it usually demands some change in culture and practice to move forward. So I'm hoping our presentation tonight will clarify that. Next slide, please. You're familiar with the timeline. We've been working since February, really, give us this direction, and now we are in the June frame where we are bringing the initial draft here to you with a plan to bring our final plan to you on the 15th, as President Ordway shared, aligned with our requirements in terms of our LCAP process as well. Next slide. I think this is an important one, and I apologize that it's smaller, but what it's trying to convey is that we're not doing this work of equity, deep learning and innovation, and social emotional well-being as distinct components. For example, when we think about deep learning and innovation, we're thinking about relevant learning opportunities with academic excellence. We're thinking about belonging and purpose. We're thinking about effective programs, support services, and resources. And some might say, well, isn't that somewhat social emotional well-being? Yes. But when we look at social emotional well-being, we're also thinking about multiple strategies that engages the interests, strengths, passions, and needs of our students. Some might say, well, doesn't that sound a little bit more like learning? Of course it does. Think about equity, safe and caring and inclusive conditions for all students to be successful. Students owning their learning because we've created those conditions, removing barriers, confronting bias, systems where required. Again, none of these things are separate. And though you will see strategies around each, I wanted to start there so that we understand the significance of our students as whole beings, and we're supporting all aspects of our students. The boxes around the whole child circles are also key, because without these conditions in our district, we probably would not be successful. Shared leadership, the capacity that enables and empowers change. Effective stewardship of resources. What is the standard we want for our kids in San Ramon Valley Unified School District, and how to ensure that we have the resources to provide that? A culture of responsiveness, which speaks to a level of service. We are not distracted so that we can focus on our students. And effective governance, which means that we look to you to provide the significant oversight and direction as we move forward. But one of the things that I appreciate about having a strategic direction approved by the board, it allows us to stay focused. And it also demands that we as a staff team bring to you regularly information so that you can engage, challenge, interrupt sometimes, and provide that important oversight. Next slide, please. Before I move to this really important information that outlines what President Ordway has already shared, I want to just share something that I've learned along the way. It's really important that the district, our departments, and our school sites are in an important relationship with one another. Too often, the pendulum moves, in my experience, between what the district says and how the school sites respond, or how the school sites might want something to be a certain way and how the district responds. And what I'm inviting us to consider through this plan is that we collaborate, which we've done and will continue to do, to create this plan. However, it will only work if these district parameters are engaged by our school communities and the members of our departments. That's why you're going to see in this presentation why next fall is so important. I would argue that without that step, it becomes a document that is passed someplace far, far away from schools that may lack some of the relevance we know is so key unless we have more opportunities to engage. So I just wanted to share that that's a really important part of the proposal that is here before you this evening. So as we've learned, our strategic plan will direct and guide us. I've just shared that our school planning will engage within that, but it will be contextual and responsive. We will also fulfill our requirement in terms of our LCP process, which is one that is this year. I'll speak a little bit more about that in a minute. And of course, our ongoing LCAP planning. So I don't want you to think that these are separate things, as President Ordway already introduced. Next slide. I think it's important for us to know that the LCP expected us to respond in the areas you see listed there. It's all been a part of the package, so I won't repeat it. But you approved that plan in September of 2020. And it's important now to note that there is some important approval work that needs to happen now, which is why we've shared with you and our community all of the information related to the commitments that were made to the LCP, an update of our commitments in the LCAP, and going forward, our LCAP process will be nested within our strategic directions work. Next slide, please. This is an important statement to unpack briefly, and I'm going to pick 3 words that are in color. When we thrive, we mean flourishing, growing, developing successfully. When we say innovative, we're comfortable with new ideas. We are capable of trying new strategies. We are willing to engage new concepts with our students in mind. Inclusive. We hold high expectations for our students, and we understand the diversity of our students, their learning, their experience, their culture, their strengths, their needs. And because of that, we understand the importance of personalizing that learning in a context, as I've said earlier, of that academic excellence. So what I think is important here is those 3 words in that statement, I think, can drive the conversation. You've just heard my perspective on it, but I'm sure that we can share what does thriving mean to you throughout this district, and we would get rich dialogue that takes us even further. Next slide. This plan broadens the definition of success that we already experience. It is grounded in our commitment to academic excellence, but it speaks to the joy and love of learning. It speaks to the appreciation of teams and collaboration. It speaks to our students being curious, confident, and independent. It speaks to social, emotional, and physical health, empathy, compassion, factors that are so important to our human community, purpose and service, and an achievement of self-selected goals. so that our students feel that sense of accomplishment that comes from meeting every expectation, but also meeting their own. And so, even though I want to be absolutely clear that the academic excellence that our district has always experienced remains, and this is what I mean by broadening the definition. Next slide, please. I've already explained why August to January is so very important. Our goal is that you would approve the high-level directions, and then we would facilitate discussions throughout our district for the next 5 months. And that what we would ask of each of our school sites in particular is to make meaning in their space and in their own community, within the parameters that you approve. And I'll speak to that in a moment. Next slide. While we're doing this important strategic work and engaging our communities, there are some things that have already happened or have started previously that we're going to continue. I want to be really clear that we promised that we are going to start the 21-22 school year differently. What that means is some of our kids haven't been in school for over a year. We know that we need to do that important connection work, engagement work, helping kids be back in school again together in what we hope is a normal fashion, whatever quote unquote normal means. We're still waiting for June 15th. We're still waiting for public health to give us our guidance, but we are planning for an amazing start to 2022. We're going to continue with the use of Fastbridge and working on our multi-tiered systems of support and grading, of course. We're going to continue to look at issues of access, instruction, programs, interventions. We have committed publicly that we will engage all of our staff in what I call important awareness work around bias, implicit, explicit. We need to have that baseline understanding of how it impacts our students' learning. But in particular, while we're doing that work, you have already heard about, and we will be ensuring all of our staff have the opportunity to engage our Responding to Discrimination and Hate handbook. And we also know that we need to strengthen our reporting mechanisms so that while we're doing the important professional learning, there are still avenues for our students or our staff or our communities to follow if they feel that they need to let us know of something that's happening. So I share this list with you because nothing on here is new. It's just I wanted to emphasize that while we're doing this dialogue, facilitated conversation in all of our sites and departments for 6 months, that we still have ongoing work that will continue. Next slide, please. So in particular, our first direction is that we will ensure that all students are empowered to reach their full potential by valuing student voice, addressing systemic inequities, and closing opportunity gaps. And what we have shared, and I'm not going to read it all to you, is some really important ways in which we intend to fulfill that. We're looking at systemic issues. We're looking at curriculum issues. We're looking at personal issues. And what is our goal? To ensure that all students have what they need. And that may mean making change. In fact, I'll say it clearer. That will mean making some changes when we look at our data, understand our students, knowing that some do not at this time have the same access as others, and we will lean into that, and we will sort out how to serve our students most effectively. Next slide, please. Again, social emotional well-being is not a thing that stands alone. It is in the fabric of our communities. We need to be intentional about that. It needs to be incorporated into our learning. It also needs to ensure that we have appropriate supports. But before we jump to the absolute appropriate supports, which I totally understand and appreciate being a former counselor, we also need to know and understand and think about how in our classrooms and in our schools we are utilizing the strategies that have already been started. It's not new, so we can help our kids be grounded, healthy, confident individuals. Next slide, please. The deeper learning and innovation piece continues the work that's already begun. It allows us to take that notion of how we meet each student's needs. It takes us to the place where we understand that ownership has to be there. It honors different pathways after high school. It's come to our attention through this process. Are we honoring, for example, career and technical education pathways as much as we're honoring our college pathways? Some would argue we aren't. We need to look in, we need to sort through. So again, this whole part is basically saying our kids have been really clear with us when they say, and we've all heard it, why am I learning this? I would argue that even though we do want our kids to learn every aspect of the California standards, they still need to know why they're learning this. That question should never be one that is left unanswered. They may not like it, that's a different story. But understanding the why is so key. Next slide, please. I really want to spend a moment speaking about shared leadership because it's not just about staff, it's not just about formal leaders, principals, or directors, superintendent working with community. It's about all of us. Developing protocols of trust, meaning that it doesn't mean we're taking votes all the time. It doesn't mean that just because we disagree, it doesn't have to end the conversation. But what it means is that we work together. We create the conditions to support the work together. We are honest about what's happening. We are putting on the table the different issues. We share as transparently as possible the complexities that sometimes are behind some of the decisions that need to be made. And we do our very best to keep us all on that same page. It needs to be disagreement. Disagreement is healthy as long as it's respectful and professional. So that's what this whole direction is trying to capture in the package that you received. Next slide, please. This is a discussion that we've had in the short time I've been with you on numerous occasions. Absolutely clear what our community believes our students deserve. And in my role, I would never argue. The plan actually speaks to some of those things. Access to arts, access to the interventions our kids require, access to social emotional supports, choices, options. No one's arguing with those. We have to face some of the challenges, even as we are hearing more and more about dollars coming to school districts. I think everyone knows well that our district sits in a very unique spot, and we need to do some pretty focused work here. And so that's why it's sitting in the strategic directions. Next slide. The culture of responsiveness is very much connected to the shared leadership, but the onus in this particular section is on our staff. How do we respond? How do we open doors? How do we help our community navigate us? How do we share information? How do we learn the information we gather? How do we show that the information we gather has actually made a difference? Even if we're not able to do what has been asked, it's clear what is being done and why as we take in all of that important perspective. That's what this particular strategic direction is. Turn to the next slide, please. I'm proposing a bit of a shift through this. You know of our required committees, our LCAP Committee, our FOAC, our Parcel Tax, our English Language Advisory Committee, our District English Learner Advisory Committees. Those we understand and know. I see a really significant relationship between the LCAP Committee, and I know that you, prior to my coming, had a well-being committee, and then we made it culture and climate, but I'm actually proposing something a little different again, which is up to you to decide when we make the final decision if this is what you'd like. I see that the LCAP committee could stay at that level of how are we using our resources to speak to the entire strategic plan and all the elements that would be found in LCAP. But I see the three committees that are outlined on the right-hand side as the place to do two things. One, to put some of the smaller committees that we really want not to be standing alone so that there's some real cohesion in a deep way because the focus would be in that one particular strand of the strategic direction. But for all of these committees, a desire that there be an explicit feedback loop back to you. So that even though some of you do serve on committees, based upon we can have no more than two, but it comes back through the public, to the public, through the board meeting, what some of the key insights are on a regular basis. But what I would appreciate by this is having that ongoing structure, keep going deeper in the areas of the plan that allows us to then, from a staff perspective, bring insights to you for your oversight, as I said earlier. So that's a bit of a structural piece that I'm proposing to you when this comes back to you next week, 2 weeks from now, for your approval. Next slide, please. So, as I started, I will finish. Transformation happens when we think about culture and practice. So this plan includes a couple of shifts. We're broadening the definition of success while maintaining high standards for academic achievement. We're strengthening and enhancing shared leadership and responsiveness because it serves students better. We're prioritizing equity and inclusion as a condition for all students' success. And we're changing instruction, assessment, and intervention as necessary to support this strategic work, which is about, again, serving our students. But obviously, there's a lot that goes underneath these 4 comments, some of which has to happen at the district level, some of which has to happen at the department level in our service departments. Some of this needs to happen at the school level. And that's why, again, I can only keep emphasizing this has to be about dialogue and engagement to get to good in new places, not about something we write with a small group of people in a room and we pronounce it and then we share it. There's a lot that's going on here because we have been engaging for the last 4 months. Lots of voices and experiences have influenced this work. And that's why I think that if we continue into the fall as we've started, we will get to a place that's even that much richer because of the involvement. Next slide. So there's 2 ways that we'll be inviting through communication that goes out tomorrow. Obviously, as we've said, we are looking at our strategic plan and we would like people to provide their feedback. I know that a few members of the community have commented that they don't appreciate the thought exchange tool because they find that it doesn't necessarily meet their needs. But we did think deeply about that, and what thought exchange does allow us to do is to allow people to put their insights in, and even if people don't go and rate other people's insights, it still allows our system to gain the rich voice. There's no other way to gather that insight data perspective as quickly as we need this, because we need this in a week in order for us to come back to you on June 15th. Similarly, we have feedback on the LCAP and the updated LCP. And of course, as you know, John Campopiano leads that very important work. Next slide, please. So this is the end of the presentation. Again, we're not finished yet. June 15th is when we plan to final copy to you. But I would really appreciate on behalf of our team, what do you want to see that you're not seeing? What might we need to include that you feel we might have forgotten? What may be missing from your perspective? Or does something I said or something you read need more clarification? So President Ordway, I'll turn this back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Malloy. Can you walk me through the 3 committees again that you're, from the equity, deep learning, and the social emotional, and how that, again, you're separating that a little bit from pulling it out from the whole LCAP.
Right.
Right.
So one of the things that I have found whenever we try to do too much at any one committee, that we might not be able to go deeper. And I do think that our LCAP committee needs to stay at the level of looking at the entire plan, looking at our LCAP dollars, and providing their advice and wisdom. I do think that that's important. I also think that we need to go deeper, though. And if we can create some agendas that really allow for us to look specifically at each area of the strategic plan, the goals and the strategies, what's working, what's not working, what advice do people have, how can we gain other people's perspectives? One of the things that I've learned about an authentic planning process is that it's not static. If something emerges in year 1 that we have to shift something we're doing, then we need to shift it. doesn't wait till year 5 because the committees could potentially assist us. So part of what we are going to explore is not having too many structures that make it unwieldy, but thinking about the structures that we do have to be sure that they meet the needs of moving our work forward. So that's why we saw those 3 committees as an deeper within the strands of the plan. And then our LCAP committee still stays at the level of gaining rich insight as well, so that when we come to you, we're providing the feedback that comes from the committees as well as our LCAP kind of stakeholder oversight. And then you obviously make the decisions regarding our next steps.
Okay, and I guess in that way too, it might be a little easier to get measurement, right, for the 3 separate areas.
Thank you for raising that. One of the things that isn't here yet, and I'll make a really quick comment. I won't bore you with too many of the details, but improvement science or implementation science understands awareness, pre-implementation, partial implementation, full implementation. In other words, we may want to get to this spot down here, but we haven't even built an awareness of why that's important. Your measurements change depending upon where you are in the continuum. That's the reason why we need a little bit more time with our community to hear from them before we actually land on measurement evidence tools. But yes, we'd want the committees to help us.
Susanna, can I ask a follow-up related to committees? So, John, I'm thinking of other committees that we have that also seem to play into those, and I'm wondering if you're thinking about pulling them under those 3 or how that fits into the mix. I'm thinking right off the bat about culture and climate one.
Yes. So when we brought culture and climate together, because it does make sense, because the equity and well-being discussion is important, we don't want to, by doing this, then send a message that they're all separate again. But we have other existing committees that are doing a subset of this work. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's the feedback loop of who's influencing, how is that changing our practice, where are we communicating it so that people see that it's made a difference, is kind of how we're looking. So even though there's some committees that might favor deep learning and innovation, like some of our literacy work or some of our gifted work or what have you, it doesn't mean that there wouldn't be some small groups within that would still gather, but there's a place for it to live where there could be rich discussion that then makes it back here. So yes, we're
I just
thinking about
wonder
that.
how those cogs fit into, so the people who have invested this year or prior years are part of that
Yes.
process.
This is our goal. We learned from the superintendent's task is not about excluding people interested to engage, but figuring out how to engage them effectively.
And so that they're informed of what each other are doing, because that's something I've noticed on some of our committees is that, when you're only on one, you don't have the context of everything
Right.
else. Okay, thank you.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about what I'm kind of seeing as an on-ramp to implementation, that June to January. Like, what does that look like? What is that going to look like for our stakeholders, for our community, for our schools, for our students, in terms of getting from this point to the point of really moving forward with the strategic plan?
So what we're working on now, and you will see in your package that when there was a request for some support from outside, if you will, I want to start by saying I'm a believer of some thought partners, some friends, I call them, who actually don't come in just to give a workshop, but actually work with us, listen to us, challenge our thinking, interrupt where necessary, but it's always in the context of the work we're doing, not something separate. So part of what you see in tonight's package is a request to work with Studer, and what we need to do is develop that facilitated process that goes on in all of our schools and departments, involves our parents, involves our students, and that's part of our work this summer. So we kind of know what we're talking about once you approve our strategic directions. Then we need to think about, well, what does that mean for us in this particular school, serving these kids in this community? And we know that if we get the process right, then it actually allows us to inform the whole systemic plan. And so that's work that is kind of conceptually sorted out, We've done a lot of homework regarding how others have, Trustee Mintz asked at the last meeting, how are you scanning what's going on elsewhere? We've done that, and we've gotten some rich insights about how to proceed. So I would say that we'd be in a much better position to speak to you explicitly about the facilitated process in an August board meeting, because that's the next step.
Okay, that makes sense. And then just a little piece that I noticed when I was going through the agenda packet, with the culture of responsiveness. I felt like I didn't see a directive that was really about communicating to students specifically and directly. I think one of the things that I've heard and I've noticed and that has been talked about is from students that they're either not getting the same information that other stakeholders are getting, including their parents, or they're not seeing it, or it's actually different information than what their parents are telling them they're getting. So I know that's kind of in the weeds, but it was just something that has been on my radar that I wanted to kind of make sure that we focused on how can we make sure that we're actually directly engaging students and communicating with them and not just assuming that they're going to find the information that we're putting out to other stakeholders that see communication in a different way and look for it in a way.
And thank you. We remembered very important the shared leadership section, and we are trying to mirror those two components because they're a bit unique, but they're very connected. That on the responsiveness component.
And I just wanted to say, I sometimes forget to say this, but I was so impressed with the agenda packet, with the all of that detail with the process, and then with this presentation. I sit here and I'm just so grateful for all of the work that the entire community has done, all of the committees, all of the stakeholder engagement, all of the taking that information and this plan that I no longer just hope, but I believe can actually create transformative change in our school district. And I'm really excited to see this happen. So thank you.
Any other comments?
In speaking to the racial equity petitioners this last week, it became really apparent that there's a great need for all of this work in the district, and especially I think the committees, the individual committees that Dr. Malloy put on the slide, I think will really go to support and inform our strategic plan moving forward. And I'm also really excited hearing about how we're going to actually make this happen. Now we have the plan that is all of the things that we want to focus on. What we want to hear about next, obviously, is how this is going to happen and what resources that we are going to put forth to do it. So a lot of great work has been done on this. As Laura said, I'll reiterate and say thank you to our community, to staff, and to teachers and students. And I'm looking forward to having a student on the board and having a student senate, because I think that will help to facilitate not only the communication with our student community, which is so important, but will give students a voice, an actual voice here on the board and in the community, and hopefully empowers them to know that they have great sway as far as us listening to their voice and wanting to hear what they have to say and take into consideration as we make all of our decisions.
Okay. We do have some public comments on this item. So if Helen of Doty Valley, if you can come speak to 9.1.
Sorry, I couldn't hear your reading of my name, so I apologize. But thank you for the opportunity to address what Dr. Malloy just presented to us. I have concerns about Fastbridge. I just quickly did some research online. It is related to Illuminate Education. They're less than 3 years old. and on their website, they claim to be the largest technology platform. That should scare you because we don't really know who they are. Do you know who they are? I really don't want my students, assessment, mental health to all be linked together by, they now own my child. They're like his God or her God. This is not right. Has any of you trustee member done any research into the technology development in the school district? It is frightening. I know none of your students are currently in the school district. So you make decisions that impact not just me, but minors. Will you please kindly check on this company, Fastbridge? I absolutely oppose this. And you're also taking away what belongs to the teachers. They are the professionals. The teachers know they're the ones who teach. They're the ones who are supposed to assess. Now you are basically dumbing down the teachers. They're just supposed to deliver the curriculum that you order them to deliver. And now you're even telling them you are not capable enough to assess. We have bought this technology for you, so there, just punch in the keys. Are you treating us just like trees or rocks? We're human beings. Please slow down. This technology advancement is frightening and it's Marxist. Thank you.
And next speaker is Nicole Horror on 9.1. I'm sorry. We're going to speak on 9.3 actually, right?
It's fine either way.
No, it's my fault, sorry. Are you going to be speaking on this?
No, I can wait.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry about that. My mistake. I was just handed, and I didn't see the actual item number. So sorry, Nicole. Okay, so that's, I think we have the only one on 9.1. So we're going to move on to, oh, yes.
First, I want to thank Dr. Malloy and staff for their continued work on the strategic plan. And for anyone who questions the move of developing this plan now, as we're still trying to work through the pandemic and getting our kids back to school for the fall, I think it's made very clear that this is a great opportunity. It's a transitional time for us, a great opportunity to look back at all the things that we've done well, but also those areas where we can find improvement. And to recognize that looking for improvement is not a bad thing. It's actually a very positive thing that we continuously strive for doing better. One point that was brought up already was the of measurement, and I appreciate Dr. Malloy's response to that. I guess the only thing that I'd be looking for is, as we look at the strategic level from a district perspective, prior to getting into strategic planning at individual school sites and tactical plans to follow that, that there may be a need for specific, not just measures, but also feedback mechanisms that as additional planning goes forward, that we're able to adjust as needed anything in the plan as we're developing it right now, and to consider what those feedback mechanisms might look like. That was it.
Thank you for that, Trustee Mintz. I'll be very brief in saying that within the plan, you're seeing something that we're referring to as a continuous improvement cycle. That is something that needs to be owned at school and in, frankly, classroom level. And what the district would support is that process. And what I mean by that is when we're looking at our data, when we're understanding the story it tells, when we're looking at the learning that's required in that particular community to move the goals forward, when we're looking at the evidence we're collecting in order to monitor for impact and then celebrate successes, that's the feedback loop that then moves forward about 2/3 of this strategic plan, because that's where change happens. There are some other district conditions, though, that we've also put forward that would need district level measurements, but never in such a way that it gets in the way of that other important piece that I've just described. So what we'll be doing at the district level is focusing on some of those district measurements while we're supporting our schools and departments with the work they're doing. And that's why we have this envision to all come together kind of in a January 1st date, hopefully with a little bit more strength, a little bit more clarity, measurements attached, and much more ownership. And we'll take that back, that whole concept of even if the evidence we're collecting is school-based or classroom-based, there still needs to be a feedback loop so we understand the impact.
I appreciate that because I know one of the criticisms of strategic planning in general is like writing a mission statement that gets put on a wall. And that's as far as anyone sees, or a strategic plan that goes in a binder onto a shelf. And it's not until you continuously look at it, as you said, that it has life, because it should be a living document. It's, it creates a foundation, but the foundation always has that opportunity to continue to advance.
Okay, then we're going to move on to 9.2, additional stakeholder input results.
And this is going to be a very quick feedback loop, to use Trustee Mint's comment. Because we asked some questions, I feel it's very important for us to bring back what it is that happened at the Superintendent Task Force, as well as there were a few thought exchange questions that didn't explicitly inform the strategic directions, but it did, but not explicitly, that I felt we should close the loop. So if I can just look at the next slide, please, Logan, and the next one, please. So basically, we did have approximately 100 participants. All of our community was represented in 2 meetings. Next slide. You see when the meetings were. We did large group discussion first, then we moved into small group breakout sessions. The first meeting was more specifically give us the themes. The second meeting, we tried to drill down a little bit deeper so that we understood actual solutions, proposed solutions to those overarching themes that emerged. Next slide. So we learned some things that I think are so important for us to keep in mind about the importance of communications, all the different methods that we need to communicate. We talked about the importance of social media balance. It plays an important role, but we also need to remain balanced in terms of our involvement and our engagement so that it's actually bringing us together, supporting our work, and not necessarily causing some of the issues that we've all participated in and struggled with on occasion. Community engagement, figuring out ways to utilize some of the virtual opportunities that emerged this year because it actually helped us with engagement, but also knowing that people are really wanting to be together and we need to do that as well. So for example, I'm guessing that the very large number of participants with our strategic directions process was because of all the virtual opportunities that existed. There's no reason we can't continue those and continue or return to face-to-face community building experiences. Lots of concerns about our students returning to school in the fall, which is why you heard me address it in the previous presentation. A real important need to reconnect and celebrate, heal some of the divisiveness. Issues emerged around consistency through this last year, curriculum, standards, grading. I'm guessing, based upon some of the conversations that happened, it's because, and this is a good thing, our families have been very intimately connected to what's going on in our classrooms due to the virtual nature of them for most of the year. So there's been some important questions raised. And again, there's that fine balance between, as we heard this evening, that the professional judgment and expertise of our staff, which we honor, and some consistency through policy and direction, which allows us to be all on the same page, and getting that balance right, which I have shared with some of you, has probably been an area that I've spent much of my own research experience in. It's one that is never final. You're always trying to keep the healthy balance between district and school. And as long as we're continuing the dialogue, it's that balance that we work towards. And equity, programs, services, access, safe and inclusive learning environments came up over and over again. Next slide, please. The thought exchange asked a few questions, different, as I said, than the strategic planning process. Next slide. We asked about what we should consider in terms of a smooth transition to the new school year. You see the number of participants, the numbers of thoughts that were shared, and then the amount of times that a thought was rated, 30,000 ratings. And you're seeing some of the things that I will allow Assistant Superintendent Huardo to speak about in another presentation tonight related to how you have already given us direction to use our funding, and we're finalizing that this evening. But what you're seeing on that slide, you've actually seen in that report that we're finalizing tonight. Counselors, paraprofessionals, interventions, and so forth. The notion around consistency emerged again, so I'll just leave it to say that we are forever in that important conversation, and safety will remain paramount. Next slide, please. The concept of one-time dollars, again, we're seeing similar ideas. And we do understand, if I look over to the right, the importance of that equitable access again. It's kept coming up over and over again. We've captured that in the section related to how we use our resources effectively in the strategic plan. Next, please. And those are the common priorities: the smaller class sizes, the student support, the consistency. That's what came up from that group. Now, I'm also clear, because I've been in other discussions, everybody might agree with number 3. I just need to put it out there candidly. There are some in our community that are not always comfortable with the consistency piece. And I just promise you that we'll keep those healthy dialogues going so we can find the right balance as we work through things. And I think that's the last slide. Final thoughts are yours. I just wanted to bring those insights to you, and you'll be seeing more opportunities where I'll take, or a member of our team will take 10 minutes and bring to this space things we've learned at the committees that we're participating.
Comments or questions?
Just that this is very helpful, thank you. And I'm looking forward to the summaries for committee meetings.
And you'll get to hear from many of our team, because different members of the district team facilitate these conversations, and they're going to have an opportunity to provide that brief report at various meetings throughout the year.
Right. Okay. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, because I'm thinking about, right, the consistency throughout the district, but then you talked about how we honor the differences of each school site. So how, like the balance the two.
And I'll just say that I use a term called, we need to be intelligent and responsive. And I'm defining intelligent, which is when the evidence suggests we need to do some things in a certain way, let's not keep reinventing the wheel. There needs to be some consistency with that really important evidence. We also need to be willing to shift when new evidence, I've used that word a lot tonight, I guess that's going to become my popular word, or change when new evidence emerges. And we need to be responsive to local culture and local context. So we're always holding those in a balance. And that's going to be something that through the strategic plan, I think you're going to be hearing much more about as we do this work.
All right, thank you. Okay, 9.3, public comment for non-agenda items. Public comment will be limited to no longer than 3 minutes, and the board cannot discuss any items not on the agenda for this meeting. The views expressed during public comment are those of the individual speaker and do not necessarily reflect the views of the board or district staff. The district believes in an inclusive, welcoming, and safe environment for its meetings for all of our community. The board respects each individual's rights to express ideas and opinions. Pursuant to applicable law and board policy, the board will not prohibit public criticism of the board or district. We kindly ask that when making public comments, you refrain from the use of profanity, exercise tolerance of others and their viewpoints, and exemplify model behavior. Please be mindful that the district students may be watching. You are encouraged to address the board and the public in a respectful manner such that all those observing, from children to adults, are made to feel welcome, safe, and respected. The board will not permit any disturbance or willful interruption of board meetings. Persistent or excessive disruption by individual or group shall be grounds to terminate the privilege of addressing the board. With that, Nicole, apologies again for earlier, called you at the wrong item. So,
all right. Good evening, San Ramon Valley admin and board. My name is Nicole Horror, and I'm glad to be here in person tonight to address you directly. We are just days away from ending a long, hard school year. The silver lining through all of this mess to me was making so many great new friends and discovering the passion and support that comes from parents really caring about their kids and communities. There is a collective energy here that I am proud to be a part of. I am glad to hear our strategic plan for fall, but I feel like it is long overdue to celebrate our immensely successful return to school. I am not sure if you have done this previously, but if you have, it did its way to parents like me. We had 10,995 students and staff return to our campuses, and I have heard nothing but joy, gratitude, and appreciation for accomplishing this. Our kids are thriving in the environments that they are meant to be in. I only wish we could have done this for them sooner. It is sad and shameful to me that it took so much energy, waiting, and fighting to get to this place. Scientists and medical experts have been saying for over a year now that in-person school is both safe and important. When parents like myself echoed these same sentiments here, we were called reckless and selfish. The data could not be more clear. There was nothing reckless about returning to school. Since October 27th, when our campuses first opened, there have been a cumulative total of 22 COVID cases at elementary sites, 13 at middle school, 31 at high school, including the 8 from the original Del Amigo adult ed isolated issue. That is a total of 66 cases between students and staff out of the 10,995 that returned. That equates to a total of 0.8% positive cases in our school population. A reminder that cases do not necessarily equate to illness. As I have heard repeatedly, many of these cases exhibited no symptoms whatsoever. The district office in this same time had 10 cases out of a staff of 297, which is 3.3% positive of their population, and more than 4 times the amount of cases on school sites. Furthermore, the amount of cases in the community during the same period was around 2.5% of San Ramon Valley population and 4.3% of our county, which all of our metrics were based on. Our school case count is 3 to 5 times lower than our local case count, providing yet another data point that schools are both safe and important. There was not a single case of transmission documented at our school sites in the initial isolated issue at Del Amigo, which is a largely different data set than our gen ed settings. We must use this data and shift the narrative from a fear-based mindset to one full of confidence and growth when making our plans for returning all of our students next year.
Wrap up your comments.
We have had tremendous success, but it is time to build on this foundation and use the momentum to go forwards. There must be a sense of urgency to return our kids to normal. Normal is defined by the students with
Thank
things
you,
that
Nicole.
matter to
That's
them.
3 minutes.
Okay. Like playing in the band, rallies, sporting events, dances, and community participation. I'm glad that the parents are being heard, but it's time to listen to our kids too. Transparent communication, community engagement, and a sense of urgency
Hi,
for our
Nicole.
children.
I'm sorry,
is
that's
critical
3
to get
minutes.
through the next school
Thank
year.
you.
Next speaker is John Vespi on 9.3.
Good evening, members of the board, staff, and community. I am John Vespi, a middle school physical education teacher at Windermere Ranch. I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak tonight. I'd like to begin by thanking and acknowledging Ann Katzberg for a career dedicated to supporting students, educators, and staff. Ann's passion for education and providing the best for our students has been unifying. Her leadership and inspiration has guided educators to continue to push for the best supports and learning conditions for our students need and deserve. Ann's leadership and advocacy has made a tremendous difference in the lives of our students and our educators. She will be missed. I wish her the best as she transitions to her next adventures and thank her for her dedication and compassion for students and staff during a remarkable career. I'd like to use the remainder of my time to confront the issue of hate speech that has been targeted at Board President Susanna Ordway. Words matter. We must not show indifference when hate speech is targeted at an individual, group, or nation. Our silence harms our children. Standing against hate in every form it takes bears witness to the most vulnerable that they are safe and will be protected. We must not be silent when confronted with hate. Inaction is more harmful than the words that are weaponized. Thank you for listening to me tonight.
Next speaker is Shirley Converse.
Hi, I'm Shirley Converse, District School Psychologist. I'm here today to speak on behalf of students with disabilities. I work with students in special education with emotional disabilities and autism. I'm so grateful for the support of my colleagues, district administration, and Servia this year. I'm so proud of the students I supported. They did their very best in battling anxiety, depression, hopelessness, paranoia, ongoing suicidal ideation, anger, substance abuse, and interpersonal conflict. Based upon what I experienced this year, it'll take 2 to 3 years for students with disabilities to regain what they lost over the past year. For others, the pandemic triggered old wounds and trauma. Trauma, whether first or secondhand, negatively affected us all. It will take time to heal. This is why it's so important to have a psychologist-to-student ratio that is good for students with disabilities. School psychologists do not have a ratio like counselors in the district. Our ratio at several of the middle and high schools in the district is 1 to over 1,000. The National Association of School Psychologists recommends a 1 to 500 ratio for school psychologists. San Ramon school psychologists are asking for a 1 to 700 ratio. When I was a site psychologist serving 3 elementary schools, my ratio was 1 to 1,400 or 1 to 1,500 for years. Students with disabilities deserve better in San Ramon. I'd like to share a little bit about my job this year. I worked at 10 different schools, which included 3 high schools, 1 middle school, 3 elementary schools, 2 non-public schools, and 1 residential facility. I also worked as part of the district's suicide prevention team alongside social workers, counselors, school psychologists, teachers, and administrators, creating training for all district mental health workers and elementary teachers to be in compliance with California suicide prevention laws. The district I work on, the Mental Health Collaborative, was cut by 1 member in June of 2020. We only have 3 members for the entire district, which may or may not be enough to meet the mental health needs of students with emotional disabilities next year. Also, did you know that school psychologists are the only educators in the district who are not compensated for professional development, like teachers, counselors, social workers, behaviorists, or occupational therapists within our district? This certainly isn't what students need following a pandemic. What our students with disabilities need are highly educated and trained school psychologists
Wrap up your comments.
who are compensated for their efforts that they make to improve students' lives. Was that the end?
You have just a few more seconds.
Okay, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it.
Next speaker is Helen of Dirty Valley.
First of all, I don't like to be judged. Whatever I say here, it is within my right to address a government that I do not relinquish my freedom of speech to. So for other people to say, to judge me or, to comment that my speech, the burden is on their own character. I am practicing my freedom of speech. And President Ordway, you did mention in your email in the past that your maiden name is Wang. Can you please clarify? Aren't you from
Excuse me, Helen.
China?
Helen. Excuse me. That's
Well,
enough.
only because I was judged, so I had to.
I understand, but that's not appropriate.
Okay, well, it's your opinion, but I will stop.
Thank
So
you.
I have 2 things to address. Because the pandemic has ruined so many people's lives, mine included. I would like to bring to your attention that there is more flu coming out right now from China. It was just reported today by AP, by MSN, by multiple media, that now there is a virus that is jumping from the chicken or birds to humans coming from China. I would like Dr. Malloy to please work on a protocol for enrolling foreign students that are coming to this country. Never again should we ever be shut down because of government lapse for protecting us and then blame us for being hateful when our lives have been screwed for almost 2 straight years. Yeah, I'm hateful. No, I'm not hateful. I'm simply telling the truth. Enough is enough. If I live to be 60 years old, 2 years is a long time of my life that is being shut down, not by my free will, but by government. The next thing I would like to ask you to please reflect is you're moving so quickly, technology-wise. Where is the accountability? Who basically vetted Fastbridge? Illuminate. There was absolutely no communication between the district and the public, the parents, the students. What is Fastbridge? Did Mr. Medici source this? Are they his friends? Who are these technology companies that are mentioned without names in their website? Who are they? Are they from communist China?
Please
This is
wrap
not
up your
hateful.
comments.
This
Please
is
wrap
not
up your
hateful.
comments.
If you don't tell us, I have the right to question. Thank you.
And actually, I'd like to direct maybe Helen to talk to, I think, Assistant Superintendent Nicole Horror, or even, I think, Director Greg Pitzer about technology and our, right, those Fastbridge and other technological software or hardware that we're using at the district. Okay, next speaker is Rachel. Sorry if I get this wrong, your last name, Chandra Muski.
Hi, my name is Rachel Chandramoli, and I'm a first and second grade special education teacher at Bella Vista. I'm a proponent of the science of reading, and I'm one of the teachers who will be piloting one of the 2 proposed phonics programs next year. I'm also a reading recovery teacher. As a special education teacher and as a person with learning disabilities myself, I know that not all students learn in the same way. It's our responsibility as educators to find the way each student learns and differentiate our instruction to meet those individual needs. I want to tell you about a student I worked with remotely this year in reading recovery. This is a student who did not like school and did not like learning. During the time I worked with him, he was experiencing homelessness. Slowly, through a computer screen, we formed a relationship in which he felt safe enough to take risks with his reading and learn from mistakes. We read while he was in the car. We read while he was in the kitchen of a homeless shelter with chaos around him. We read with him curled up in the bunk of the tiny room at the shelter he shared with his mother. We read out as people outside the room yelled and argued, as trains went by and trucks thundered down the street, as dogs barked, as women screamed and swore, as children whined and cried. We read as his internet froze, time and time again. We read with him squinting to see the words on his phone. We read and talked and talked and read. And over the course of a semester, this student went from being a non-reader to reading at grade level. He went from being a student who thought he couldn't succeed in school to being a confident learner in all subjects. I truly believe that reading recovery and the relationship it allows teachers and students to form was the key to unlocking the world of reading for the student. So please reconsider your decision to eliminate this program from our district. Reading recovery and the science of reading are not mutually exclusive. They are both tools in the vast toolbox we all need as teachers to reach each and every student. Thank you.
Next speaker is Mary Lou Young.
Good evening. My name is Mary Lou Young. I'm a 5th grade teacher in the district, and I'm asking you to reconsider the elimination of the Reading Recovery Program in the San Ramon Valley Unified School District. I became a reading recovery teacher in 2013 through the I3 Scale Up grant, along with several other teachers in the district. We voluntarily taught reading recovery students along with the students in our classroom. In 2014, I became a literacy intervention TSA in the district, along with 7 other teachers, and working with students and coaching teachers throughout the district. With our ability to work with students and other reading recovery teachers working with students before and after school, we made an impact. In 2015, our teacher leader became a program supervisor, and I asked to become the teacher leader in San Ramon. This was a year-long intensive training that I worked on mainly after work. I was glad to take it on. Since then, we have had 4 cohorts equaling 33 teachers. Last Thursday, our cohort of 12 teachers who completed their training this school year was informed that reading recovery would no longer be supported in the district. There's been very little discussion with us about this decision. The reason for eliminating the program was due to equity. Since not every school has a reading recovery teacher, then it was stated that no one should have a reading recovery teacher. I've worked around the district to know that not all schools have the same interventions. Perhaps instead of eliminating it entirely, we should add reading recovery at all sites, or at least maintain it at sites that choose to continue. Reading recovery is a highly effective short-term intervention for our low-achieving first graders. Students receive 30 minutes of instruction, including phonemic awareness, phonics, reading, oral language practice, and writing instruction. Reading recovery has a scope and sequence that is based on where the student is in their literacy learning. This is truly personalized and differentiated in instruction, which helps the lowest achieving students make progress. Reading recovery has 2 positive outcomes, including bringing students up to or close to grade level, or recommending students early in their education for additional reading if accelerated progress is not made. Reading recovery is research and evidence-based and is an intervention recommended by the What Works Clearinghouse and the California State Superintendent of Schools. It is also identified as an effective intervention in the California Pathways for Recovery document, the ERSR, the ARPA funding, and by the Learning Policy Institute at Stanford, headed by Dr. Linda Darling-Hammond,
Please
and
wrap
by
up
the
your comments.
CDE and their documents and webinars. Our team of teachers in the district has impacted hundreds of students, and we must not stop now. Please reconsider providing schools with a portfolio of interventions, including reading recovery.
Mary Lou, that's 3
especially after
minutes.
the
Thank you.
pandemic. Thank you.
Next, we have Eileen Rosenberg.
My name is Eileen Rosenberg. I'm a parent and teacher in SRVUSD, and I have taught for the past 21 years, mostly in first grade. Being in the classroom every day, I am fortunate to see children discover the joys of reading and writing. I know how crucial it is to develop their literacy skills during this time. Their confidence in their abilities to read and write are rooted at such a young age. Integrating phonemic awareness, explicit phonics, and guided reading strategies is essential. Even with this work, we know many children will be successful and others will struggle with the process of learning to read. As a teacher, I have seen many interventions to help our struggling readers. Many of them have been successful. As I noticed the reading recovery teachers coming into my room over the years, I saw firsthand how some students had a rapid progression with this intervention. This led me to wanting to join the cohort and take on the 2-year commitment of gaining my reading recovery certificate. During this period, I saw how the bond of working one-to-one and giving highly targeted individual instruction can aid a child in gaining the skills to be successful, self-extending readers and writers. Reading recovery does include support in all the strategies that we use in our classroom every day. I think that we need to remember that not all interventions are a perfect fit for every child. As we have spoken so frequently about equity, it is true that we need to provide many interventions so that every child can be successful. During this unprecedented time of COVID, when so many of our students will come back with social and academic needs, reading recovery absolutely would be a benefit. It has a place among the many wonderful interventions that our district can provide. We have 33 trained reading recovery teachers. I would think now that they have all been trained, they would be utilized
Please wrap
to
up your
continue
comments.
to work with our neediest children. I respectfully ask you to reconsider eliminating this valuable program. Thank you.
Next, we have Jennifer Jones.
Thanks so much. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jennifer Jones, and I teach transitional kindergarten at Creekside Elementary. I am also a reading recovery teacher and have been in the district for 24 years. I'm actually here tonight for two reasons. First, I want to say that, acknowledge Ann Katzberg. This is Ann's last board meeting as she heads off into her well-deserved retirement. I couldn't let her leave without publicly saying to her and the community how fortunate we are to have had such a dynamic Servia president. Ann was always looking out for the best interest of the teachers and the students alike. She fought for what is right, while at the same time bringing Servia members and management together. One thing she taught me is that every member is a bargainer. We will miss you, Ann, and best wishes to you always. The second reason I am here is to address management's decision to divert reading recovery intervention funds, which in turn will end such an amazing program that specifically targets the district's lowest performing first grade students. You have all received 2 letters from me, 2 letters from parents I've worked with, and many letters from other teachers and parents who are all in support of this intervention. I am here tonight to ask you to reconsider your decision. It is in the best interest of our students to have a portfolio of interventions at our fingertips so that we are able to meet all children's unique needs. Reading recovery not only teaches children the skills they need to become readers, it is highly impactful to their social emotional well-being. No other intervention spends 30 minutes, 5 days a week, one-on-one with students. Management is making a big mistake by overlooking the impact reading recovery has on the social emotional development of our students. Many first graders will be returning to school in the fall after being out of in-person instruction due to the pandemic for over a year. This intervention is needed now more than ever. I know a group of us will be meeting with the district this Wednesday to have further discussion. It is my hope that at that meeting, we will be able to devise a plan together on how to include reading recovery as an option in the district's intervention plan while creating equity throughout our schools. Thank you for your time.
I think our last speaker on 9.3 is Margaret Batesel.
Hi, I'm Margaret Clown Foster Batesel. I'm delighted to be here tonight. I have to say, first of all, being at Los Ceres Middle School, I came back in 1988 after a 20-year maternity leave, and I was delighted to join this district. Without a doubt, it is the very best district in all the world, and I know you're going to meet all their needs. Secondly, I was in the BITSA program, and it was the first time after my Los Ceres Middle School involvement that I got to meet teachers all over the district. And I got to meet Ann Katzberg. Secondly, I got on Servia with Ann Katzberg, and I got to meet you guys because I started to come into the Board of Education meetings. I know you're the best, and I know that you're going to continue to be best. But tonight, the authenticity of Ann is what I'm here about. Across a crowded room did our eyes first meet, with teachers from every school at a BITSA retreat. Having had student teachers was not really new to me, but sharing with all the schools was enlightening to see. Across a crowded room was how it was for us. And in a team setting, we knew friendship was a must. Next, Ann became a Servia super responsible recruit. I don't know why I'm so nervous. And she strongly encouraged me to wear that boot. I guess shoe would be a better word to anticipate, but Ann makes certain that we all 100% participate. Blessed were Gordon, my husband, and me along this friendship way, to meet Mama Katzberg and the family on a special day. Both Debbie and Judy and their husbands too knew that we are honored to be Catsburg, so true. I will lovingly be the oldest of the Catsburg clan. For their unique families, I am a most grateful fan. Meeting trips, lunches, and overnight retreats too. For the sake of Servia, there was always so much to do. As president of the San Ramon Valley Education Association, Ann has always been that she truly promotes education. Not only does she fight for every student one by one, she never fails to acknowledge that the teacher gets it done. What an honor it is to know this very special educator, for she has made a difference for every single instructor. As you enter this new chapter of your most exciting journey, go forth with Susan and Terrence with much joy and harmony. Your years teaching in our district and with Servia too will always be remembered with honor and respect for you. As a teacher, you brought to each student the joy of learning, and to our district employees, you honored our earning. Your personality and charm are essential to us all, but you have proven that professionalism is your number one call. As our district will often remember your contributions true, it is with joy and excitement that we wish the very best for you. Well done, faithful servant. Go forth and continue to share, for you will always make a positive difference everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So with that, actually, we're at 9.4, Association President's Reports. So you're good? Okay. Well then, Ann Katzberg, our Servia President, would like to make your last report.
Lower it down. Hello, I'm Ann Katzberg, and this is my last speech. So I'm going to ask for your indulgence in allowing me to address you this evening. So I want to reminisce about a career that started accidentally one day in October when I walked into a bare classroom, void of bulletin boards and 30 desks that were set up in uniformed rows. I gravitated to this enormous teacher's desk that had no clutter, just a few textbooks on top. I asked the vice principal who had accompanied me to the classroom, where were the lesson plans? She said there weren't any, as this class never had a teacher. I was the 5th substitute hired to instruct this class of 6th graders, just six weeks into the school year, and whose teacher of record was said to have had a nervous breakdown. As the students took their seats, I asked them, where were they in the textbooks? And then I started to create, to mold, and develop my first community. More importantly, I began to mold myself as a teacher. One word came to mind, and that is tenacious. Within 2 weeks, the principal made me sign a contract with a district that I had never heard of in a city I never visited before that first day at Bernard White Middle School in Union City. It is this tenacity that has driven me to where I stand today as the president of the San Ramon Valley Education Association. I understand the necessity in order to support my students. I must work beyond my own classroom to affect change. As a classroom teacher, to be the best teacher, I needed to be myself. We are all unique, varied learners. What works for one student may never ignite the curiosity of another. What works for one teacher may offend the very core of another teacher. I have always listened to my inner voice, and I have poured my heart and my soul into my lessons because my students deserved my best self. And I needed to be authentically me. In this district, I have witnessed passionate debates as to why one curriculum outshines another. What matters most is the teacher who can rise up feeling confident, creative, and free to deliver joy of learning for all of our students. Our students deserve this. I can name each and every student that has profoundly touched me, and most of their stories are not about the academics. With a career in education as long as mine, you witness a lot, and that is the next chapter in my life when I write their stories. But for tonight's purposes, I want to thank you. Thank you for being part of my journey. As a leader in our district, I have had the privilege of working with 4 superintendents. I have worked with 8 trustees. And as a in Serbia, I've been able to work with our managers, and I have learned so much. Robert Albert, our former director of curriculum, taught me how important it is to implement change through a grassroots approach. Change that begins top down is rarely successful, no matter the merit of the program that is being offered. Going back to being my authentic self, I am at my best when I believe in the program. This takes intention, it takes motivation. C.J. Hammock always valued relationships. I remember him writing on many documents in order to foster collaborative relationships. Trust built upon the ability to honor the relationship. Tony Taylor allowed me to work alongside her in collaboration as we learned together how best to engage the community in the local control accountability plan, the agenda item that you're going to be discussing this evening. Much of the work I have done as a leader involves creating a system that embodies the values that I believe in. Inclusion. How can we make sure that we create space for engagement that includes the voices of all of our stakeholders? Democracy is the best way to make decisions. Our own narrow echo chamber may not be the truth. It is incumbent upon us as leaders to figure out how to hear the voices of many. Our actions tell our stories, not necessarily our words, although words do matter. Maya Angelou said, "When someone shows you who they are, believe them." Tony Taylor said, "If it is, it doesn't count." These core values take time. And speaking of time, this year together, we have spent countless hours in negotiations, including today, as I signed my very last MOU. What have these endless issues of working through the complexities of a year that we never could have planned for shown us? For our survey members, it has shown the importance of being engaged, to be aware of the many changes impacting our students. We have kept the lines of communication open for our members to the best of our abilities throughout COVID, with ongoing general membership meetings, ratification votes, and keeping our reps abreast as to what our members need. Survey's decisions are never made in isolation. I've tried to communicate this to you throughout my time as the president of your largest bargaining unit. I am just Ann Katzberg, one member, representing over 1,700 members. Their voices are what you need to hear when you are making the decisions that are impacting our students' education. As I close up this year, this position that I have held, this career that I have devoted more years to than any other person or any other thing that I've ever done. During my lifetime, I need you to know that my work isn't over. I went into education to change the world. I haven't. The world still needs us all to stand up for the things that we believe in, to ensure that everyone can be their authentic self and has a place in our community of learners. I'm leaving at a time where I believe we are ready to do what our students need us to do, to slow down, to focus on the well-being of everyone, to provide equity in our schools and provide access for all students to all programs, to spend this year's dollars on this year's students. And be the change that you imagined. Let your imagination run wild as I turn over the baton to the Vice President, Laura Finkel, who is now Serbia's new president in just 3 more days and is so invested in this work that we are all doing on behalf of our students.
Good evening. My name is Laura Finko. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. working alongside Ann for not just these last 4 years as vice president of Servia, but with her as a member and leader for over 2 decades, I have had a unique view of this district, where we've been and where we're going. As we emerge from this pandemic, we have the opportunity to make incredible changes, honest reform that will provide for all of our students as they move their paths forward. I hope that we do not lose out on the chance to work miracles. With that, I do want to take the time to pause for just a moment and reflect that this is Ann's last board meeting as Servia president. She might have small feet, but she's got big shoes to fill, and I will do my best. Ann has spent the last 13 years in the top Servia leadership positions more than anyone else. Her journey may be changing, but she will be leaving with each person she's touched a piece of herself. I know I am better because of who Ann is and what she gave the students, educators, and the community of the San Ramon Valley. Ann is my sister in labor, my friend in life, someone I honestly respect and love. Even though we didn't always agree, there was never a doubt about why she chose the road she did and where her heart is. I wish for you, Ann, all the best. And just remember, I know where you live. Well, at least for the next few months. Thank you.
Okay, I have some comment cards for 9.4, but it's got a question for Ann. Ann, remind me, how many years have you been in education? Was it 24? 32, okay, I undershot. Thank you for all those years of service to not only teachers, but the students that you've taught. Okay, Jordan Cummings.
Hi, everybody. If anyone knows me, it's impossible for me to write a speech, write anything down. I'm winging it, so I'm at a loss for words. Anne's leaving. I wouldn't be the person I am today without her gentle, sometimes not so gentle pushing into the leader that I am today. And she's going to be so missed. Her positivity, her advocacy, her willingness to stand up for what's right, even when people don't agree and when the public is against her. So she knows that being a bystander, exactly what we teach our students, is not being a bystander and standing up for what's right is so important. And I think she has left an imprint on so many people in this district. So Ann, we love you so much. We're going to miss you. And we know we're leaving Servia in good hands. Thank you.
Jennifer Jones. Oh, that's right. You did address this point also. Okay. And then Hannah Doherty Valley.
This message really is more for Ms. Katzberg. Please excuse me, I cannot face her, but I just want to say I am in shock. I did not expect to come to this board meeting knowing that this is her last meeting. I just want to let her know that as a parent and as a public, I don't always agree with her, but I do admire her characters. She's a very brave lady. No matter, she is almost like fearless. Whenever I hear her, she's like always fighting for what she believes in. Maybe it's not something I believe in also, but I admire her courage. And I actually wish to emulate her courage. I will also bravely, no matter what people think of me, I will also bravely state my belief. And thank you, Ms. Katzberg, for this inspiration. I also believe that she is a very compassionate person. Whatever she fights for, sometimes I disagree with her because there's only so much financial resources. Too bad we live on earth. However, I know her heart is always for other people. I have seen her passion for the well-being of teachers during all the negotiation fights, and I have felt her sincere compassion for students of LGBTQ, of different ethnicities, of what she believes as the more vulnerable groups of students. And I truly admire her indiscriminate compassion for people who may not look or think like her, which I also wish to emulate. As we are a very diverse nation, community, it's always a science and an art to find the equilibrium. I must admit that there are times I almost resent Ms. Katzberg when she brings the whole pendulum way too far to the left. However, I don't think that it was a bad thing that it happened, because then it brings out people like me. Without her, I wouldn't stand here, because when I was a little girl, whenever I felt discouraged or bullied, all I could do is cover myself under a blanket and beat up my pillow. But because of Ms. Katzberg, I feel I can be like her.
Please wrap
I can
up your
also
comments.
stand and speak. So I wish I knew this is your last day, Ms. Katzberg. I wish I'd have brought you a bouquet of flowers. I wish you all the best. And I can't believe you've been in service for 32 years. I will surely miss you. Thank you for your service.
Okay, great. Okay, moving on to action items. 10.1, public hearing for the proposed 2021 to 2024 Local Control and Accountability Plan, or LCAP plan. So because it's a public hearing, I'm gaveling us in and opening for the public hearing. So is there any public comments on this item? No? Okay, if no public comments, then I guess we're going to close this public hearing. Okay, moving on to 10.2. Hearing for the proposed 2021-2022 district budget. Same thing, I'm going to gavel us in to the public hearing. Is there any public comment for this item? No? Okay, then we're going to gavel out. We close the public hearing on this item as well. Okay, then we're moving next to 10.3. Yeah, and then we're talking about the ELO grant plan, right? So Assistant Superintendent Christine Mojado.
Thank you, President Ordway, and Christine and I are pairing
Joint,
up on
that's
this one.
right. And
you're
Business
totally-
Officer Greg Medici.
Totally correct. No, thank you, that we're both working together on this. This plan comes forward after great input from the board previously, so thank you. This is a required step from Sacramento related to the COVID one-time dollars that the district is in the process of receiving and set to receive. Very specifically, the expanded learning opportunity grant to the tune of approximately $19 million is specifically outlined here in the agenda, and part of the overall $30 million plan previously discussed at recent board meetings and otherwise recent input groups. And so with that, Assistant Superintendent Horto, in terms of program.
Sure, thank you. If we look up on the slide, I just wanted to the items we brought forth up in previous board meetings that the ELO grant money will be spent on. Our multi-tiered system of support, which covers our 26 teachers on special assignment that will support our MTSS model. Elementary school counselors, we are excited to hire 11 elementary school teachers to serve across our 22 elementary schools. Student supports provided by classified personnel, class size, staffing ratios, summer school, technology curriculum, and continued COVID-related health and safety initiatives. So this evening, we are asking the board to adopt the district's expanded learning opportunities grant plan as attached and presented here this evening.
Okay, any comments or questions from the board?
I have one question about technology. For remote learning, we handed out a lot of hotspots, and Chromebooks, and I'm just wondering how all that material is working, particularly over the summer. Are students bringing that material back? Are they continuing to use it in person? How do things look in terms of coming back in August relative to
Director of Technology, Greg Pitzer, is going to come to the mic too, but we are collecting the majority of the devices that we distributed so that we can get a proper accounting of it to redistribute it next fall. And for summer school, we do have supports in place to assist students who need connectivity or need devices to do the curriculum that is being offered this summer. Mr. Pitzer, did you have anything else you wanted to add to that one?
I think you basically covered it there. We are asking all students to return their devices currently. If they are coming back for summer school or one of the other summer plans, we're asking either for summer school, we'll have the devices on the for them to kind of recheck out. We're hoping that'll be their device that they can actually continue to use ongoing through next school year, next year's distribution. If it's for one of the other programs that we have going on, we're asking them to then just make an appointment next week to come in and pick up the appropriate device for them. So there may be a day or two that we're there without a device, but that'd be the extent of that. So we don't, yeah, like Mr. Elman said, we want to get as close as possible to the county of all the devices here, and hotspots will be available where needed as well.
do we have any sense of the obsolescence factor? You know, machines that be repaired, replaced, or anything like that at this point? Or is that something we're looking at as we get devices back?
It's something that we definitely we're looking at as they come back, doing repairs ongoing throughout the year. So as devices have been reported, we've worked on getting those repaired. So, you know, hopefully most of the devices will be in, you know, operational shape, but that is one of the parts of the plans for the summer is to get all devices back to working condition if there are any issues.
Very good. Thank you.
We do expect, one other comment, we do expect to have a lower number of replacements and damages this year because the large majority of students were not going back and forth from home to school, which is where we would have a lot of drops or misses or cracked screens. So in future years, we would expect to see more of that because more students will be going back and forth. But Greg and his team has been very proactive and they've been keeping up with that all along the way this year.
Thank you.
And actually, I'm just wondering how, because for the counselors, so the plan is to hire 11 elementary school counselors. And because we've never really had counselors, right, at the elementary level, how would that work with like the, you know, Rainbow Room program, let's say, and things like that, that we are, you know, offering now at the elementary level?
Thank you. Well, our Rainbow Room pairs are actually intervention specialists that are trained and supported by our school psychologist, and that is play-based therapy that takes place throughout the year for students who are identified by intervention teams at this site. The elementary school counselors will act more with a credential that is more school-based counseling, and they will do more extensive work, kind of working not only with classroom teachers, individual small groups, but in supporting the Rainbow Room pairs and other initiatives that we're going to roll out for SCL supports across all schools.
Okay, great, thank you.
And with that, will it be one counselor assigned to 2 schools, or will it be all 11 that are kind of working? How will that look?
Absolutely, great question. No, we are absolutely trying to be very strategic about the number of people that interact with principals and kids. so that you're not having to have several people coming to work at the school site and having to manage multiple schedules. So we are planning on hoping to assign school counselors if we hire them in 1.0 FTE equally across the board for all the 11. We are planning to have two school sites share one counselor.
Any other questions? Comments? Okay, then may I have a motion, because it's actually, didn't read the whole thing. For 10.3, it's consideration of adoption of the expanded learning opportunities grant plan. So
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
The motion was made by Board Member Hurd and seconded by Board Member Bratt. Call out vote. Board Member Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Bratt.
Aye.
Board Member Hurd.
Aye.
Board Member Mintz.
Aye.
Board Member Ordway.
aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Okay, 10.4, consideration of adoption of resolution number 75/2021, authorizing establishment of the Student Activities Special Revenue Fund, Fund 08. Chief Business Officer Greg Medici.
Thank you, President Ordway. This will specifically allow the district and the business office to internalize more financial data from what has previously been kind of external finance systems that the student body accounts run through. So a really good step, and also a step that all districts throughout the state will be adopting, if not this year already, then certainly for 21-22.
Okay, so this is really just like adding a line item in the accounting system for, specifically for the student activities?
Correct. So
Funding for their
the
activities.
funds are akin to checking accounts in essence. So this is like adding an ASB checking account in a QuickBooks kind of way, but through our internal financial system that will directly align with all things ASB. They still will have their forward-facing financial systems that allow them to do all of the ASB type things that they do at the site level.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Move approval.
Second.
The motion was made by Board Member Mintz and seconded by Board Member Clark. Call out vote. Board Member Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Bratt.
Aye.
Board Member Hurd.
Aye.
Mintz.
Aye.
Board Member Ordway.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Okay, now we move to 10.5, which is the consideration, it's a consent item pulled. Consideration of approval of contracts or purchases over $50,000. And Helen, I think you pulled it.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello, board members. There is a saying, the devil is in the details. I believe the details are in Mr. Medici's department. If you look at the attachment that you were given, I would like to know, number one, if the $97,500 for equity professional development is quote unquote critical race theory. If it is, that is where hatred lies. Just as somebody thinks that I should not be talking about certain country, I also don't believe that our school system has any room to attack white males and our history, to cancel our culture. I absolutely oppose that. If $97,500 has any penny that goes to hatred, teaching hate, teaching our teachers how to teach hate, I absolutely oppose it. There is $142,000 worth of Morosky license subscription. What is that? There is also $350,000 of Infinite Campus, and I believe we should shrink that because right now our Infinite Campus is doing way too much. It is now substituting our cumulative folder, physical cumulative folder, and it contains a lot of student personal information and private information that has way too much access to a lot of unrelated people in the school district. There is $250,000 of AT&T circuit. What is that? There is $1 million worth of science materials. What is that? I demand going forward that Mr. Medici stop hiding these details in a consent agenda, and he needs to disclose how he's spending our money so that we can keep our teachers and necessary reading intervention programs that, like, these teachers have been trying to ask you to keep. Thank you.
Just wondering, Dr. Malloy, can you give kind of, I know you mentioned this tutor education. Yeah, so what, can you give an idea of what type of professional development that is?
Thank you. Student Education is an organization that actually assists districts with engagement facilitation around strategic planning processes. So it's not specific to a content area at all. This is actually a thought partner, a critical other, if I can use that term, that will allow us to think through the steps. And it doesn't actually get into deep learning and innovation, equity, or social emotional well-being as a concept, but more as the entire process.
Right. So there's no more other questions or comments.
Could for the, just to honor that Helen asked a reasonable question, could we go ahead and give
the other
the explanation on the other things that she asked about?
Absolutely. Thank you, President Ordway. And Mr. Pitzer may have some further insight on this. So I believe the specific reference to Meraki, that is a wholly owned subsidiary of Cisco, so directly relates to our ability to control parts of our network. There was also a reference to Infinite Campus, obviously our student data system, long standing, and also used Meraki as well, significantly utilized throughout the state of California and the country actually for these particular services, both networking in Meraki's case and Infinite Campus and student information systems. There was a reference to the AT&T data circuits. Those are the physical connections that allow us to get fiber and other pieces and other networking pieces between our sites. And finally, the science materials is the previously approved and long standing for review middle school science materials that are set to be deployed next year.
Thank you.
And Mr. Pitzer, was anything technology-wise that I may have further detail you'd like to add?
I think the only other one was Securely that was mentioned, and that's the filtering service we use on the student Chromebooks when they're off network, and we'll be using next year as well, and also provides the ability for teachers to be able to see the student screens while they're in the classroom. To provide some supervision there as well.
Right, thank you so much for explanations.
And can I ask just a clarifying question about Infinite Campus? It's absolutely critical for us getting paid for ADA, which is how money comes to run everything. That's how we get our money from the state. So Infinite Campus is absolutely critical.
Absolutely correct, Trustee Hurd, correct.
And I'd just like to add on the Infinite Campus that also, as far as data protection, we do have a committee that evaluates who deserves which roles of access to that data. So we do make sure that everyone who needs access has that data, but only those, have the appropriate level. So there are protections of how we protect Infinite Campus, particularly because we do realize there's a lot of data that could be sensitive.
Great, thank you so much.
If I can just ask Mr. Medici, as part of the staff report, for this to be as a consent calendar item, I see a statement that says copies of the contracts are available to the board in public upon request. Is that accurate?
Thank you, Trustee Mintz. Yes, it is. Yes.
So if someone has questions, they have the ability to check on each of these individual items. And there's a reason why we do this as part of our business, able to do this as a consent calendar.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So can I have a motion to approve this item?
So moved.
Second.
The motion was made by Board Member Bratt and seconded by Board Member Hurd. Call out vote, Board Member Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Bratt.
Aye.
Board Member Hurd.
Aye.
Board Member Mintz.
Aye.
Board Member Ordway.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Right, and then now we have 10.6. It was also pulled by Helen on consideration of rejection of claim number 593565 against the district. Not quite sure who. Yes.
Hello. I read the attachment, and this is very mysterious. Is this against the district or against a specific staff or against a department? What is this? What is the damage? There is no say. So how would you know? Unless you have more information than what I read in the agenda, how can you just approve this when you don't even know what is the nature of this dismissal that Mr. Medici has motioned for you to dismiss? I just feel like these are really sloppy business. Thank you.
I don't know if,
Through President Ordway, just as a clarification.
Yes.
Whenever there are certain top under the education code and are following all laws that must be done confidentially, board would be briefed on those matters in closed session. And unfortunately, sometimes based upon the regulations and requirements, we're not allowed to speak any further than what you see in open session. But to answer the question, I'll leave it broad, that anytime there's a matter such as this, you would be on such issues in closed session, explicitly following the laws that govern it.
thank you. And yes, we are following that, and we do get briefed on those. Okay, with that, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second. The motion was made by Board Member Hurd and seconded by Board Member Clark. Call out vote. Board Member Clark? Aye. Board Member Bratt?
Aye.
Board Member Hurd?
Aye.
Board Member Mintz?
Aye.
Board Member Ordway?
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Okay, so we move on to 11.1. First reading of, so this is just more discussion information. First reading of new administrative regulation 4119.12, 4219.12, 4319.12, personnel, and AR 5145.71, students, sexual harassment procedures.
Thank you, President Ordway. This item is for the board's information, and it's the first reading of a new administrative regulation. It really defines our personnel and students' Title IX sexual harassment complaint procedures. The complaint procedures set forth in this administrative regulation will be used to address any report of Title sexual harassment in the district education program or activity to the extent required by Title IX. We are bringing forth a draft, first reading. The administration will be bringing forward the administration regulation for approval at the June 15th, board meeting. This article has been drafted by our district's litigation. So this is for you to review this evening.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments? And yeah, it's very expensive. Almost needing a law degree to understand that thing. So anyway, okay. With that, I'm going to move to administrative matters. So board reports. Have anything to report? Shelley?
Well, Laura and I met last week with the racial equity petitioners, and that was a really, really impactful, powerful meeting. We got to hear some of the personal stories of some of the people that are involved in the petition and came up with some new ideas about how to move forward with this, which I've shared with Dr. Malloy, and some of which are included, a lot of which are included in our strategic plan. So I'm excited about doing this work, and I think they were really felt heard and seen, which I think is really, really important as we move forward. So that was a really rewarding meeting.
Anything, Laura? No?
First, I want to say thank you to Anne for all of your time and energy that you've given to our district, and welcome to Laura. We're excited to work with you. We have been already, but we're excited. And then I also wanted to take a moment to make a request to the board, just to show our commitment to inclusion and to supporting our LGBTQ students and staff and community. This is Pride Month. And so I would request that perhaps we could, in our next meeting, look at presenting a resolution for Pride Month. And I'd also like to request that we discuss the idea of flying the Progress Pride flag at the district building. I did a little bit of research, and currently there are several districts in our area that that have passed resolutions and do fly the Pride flag, and also the city of San Ramon, they're doing that for the second year, and the town of Danville. Mount Diablo Unified, Alameda Unified, Pleasanton Unified, Castro Valley. These are all school districts that are flying the flag currently. So I just thought that it would be great for us to look into that and to have that conversation. So.
Thank you. Rachel?
Well, I wanted to start with that. I'm really looking forward to graduation ceremonies. They're always a highlight of the year, and it's just so wonderful that we get to do those in person. I know all of us are spread among the different sites, and I'm sure it's going to be a really special day for all of our students and their families. I also wanted to add that I think Susanna, Ken, and I were all at the San Ramon Valley Diversity Coalition meeting Monday, a week ago, I think it was. And a lot of that discussion really dovetails nicely with what you were talking about, Shelley. And we heard from a representative from at the county level about really groundbreaking work that the local fire district and the San Ramon Police are partnering on about when there are particular kinds of calls, sending fire department first, who has training in diffusing situations before needing the police to come in. And it was just so important to hear it talked about in that venue with representatives from all aspects of the community about how proactive our fire district and our city police are being. And I just think it's important for our community to know that it's not just what happens in this school district. The strength of the leadership in this valley among all of our agencies is really strong and really collaborative and really cooperative. And I just think they needed a little shout out about that. Thank you.
Just a couple of quick things. Last weekend, I participated in the military recruit swearing-in ceremony in Danville, something that has taken place locally for a number of years now. This year it was an outdoor event, recognizing the various students from our schools that upon graduation are either joining service, one of the armed services, or planning to attend one of the military academies. And it really demonstrates the community support for these young people who have chosen this as their path. Also, on Wednesday, I want to thank our president for attending the Be Real Awards as part of the Street Smarts program, recognizing middle schoolers and high schoolers also who participated in putting together videos about safe passage, bicycling, that type of thing. Finally, I was able to watch a couple of musical presentations from our schools. Coyote Creek put on a presentation on Schoolhouse Rock, and Iron Horse, and it was Laura's, I think it was either a tweet or a Facebook post.
My two boys did stagecraft for it.
Well, it alerted me to it, and I just watched it the second night, and that was at Iron Horse, and that was the Singing in the Rain presentation. And what I really appreciate in both of these cases, I know these weren't the only ones, where our schools really took advantage of the technology available to them to allow our students to perform. And I know there's various musical presentations, choir presentations that have occurred online this year. Clearly, it's not the way that we'd like to do it, but it was nice that we found ways of going forward anyway. And it's particularly interesting to me, the Singing in the Rain, which, if you know the story, is about the initial use of talkies instead of silent pictures, and how screwed up it kind of was in trying to do that. And it hit me the same way. Here we have a production with students trying for the first time to do something a little different than just being on stage. And I really appreciated all of the effort that the students, the teachers, and their parents put into these performances. And look forward to us being able to get back to some level of normal this next year when we're able to enjoy those kind of presentations in person. But again, thank everyone involved for what they've accomplished.
Yeah. And yeah, no, I think our students are amazing. They're so creative. The performances, right? I love plays in person, but when I watch those, online, I'm like, oh, that's actually another level of creativity that you need to do. But yeah, first time participating in the Be Real, the Street Smarts from middle schoolers, and even, like I was blown away by some of their videos that they were doing. So that was really cool. And then really just looking very much forward to congratulating our students, right, who are either promoted or graduating from high school. And shout out to my niece, who's actually graduating, one of the graduates this year. So anyway, and with that, Superintendent.
Thank you, President Ordway. Just very briefly, it's almost in some cases hard to believe that this is our last board meeting while we're still in school, even though I know we have another board meeting, and what a year it has been on every level. But we've come through, I think, to a great place, and I'm excited about that. And I just want to take this opportunity to just call out a little bit of affirmation, because though our entire cabinet team has been working with our community, our stakeholders on the strategic directions. In particular, I want to call out John Campopiano with the major leadership on the LCAP side of the house, and Deb Pettish, major leadership on the strategic direction side. I mean, supported by many, but I just want to honor you tonight for the amazing work that you've done. So that's for you. And I also am reflecting on all of the work that I have personally been able to do with our labor partners, and I see many of you here. Thank you for the work we keep doing through this challenging year. My gosh, the amount of times we've had to reinvent everything and to work together for that to happen. So I want to call that out as well. And in particular, and though we've never been in a meeting together in person, though we've done quite a bit literally online, thank you for all that you've brought and that you've taught me and that you've helped me understand about our culture, our community from your vantage point. I really appreciated it and I'm grateful. And Laura, I am very interested, grateful to continue to work with you. And of course, Tammy and Mona, I'm thrilled to continue working with you, and Carrie, who's not here, of course, but we're going to keep doing this important work together. So thank you. And I just want to end on that positive note, because we're going to celebrate kids this week. And that is like the best thing, as you've already said, that we can do.
Great. Thank you. Okay, with that, I think we're adjourned.